Good evening and welcome to Fridays Live with me, Raj Nayak. This evening, I have a very, very special person, somebody whom I really look up to, admire, and respect. He is one of the most influential people in the advertising, marketing, and media circles. Probably the only person that I know of and who's been the president of every industry body in this country. He's been the president of the International Advertising Association India chapter. He's been the president of the 3 Years of I, the body of all advertising agencies in this country. He's been the president of the Advertising Club. He's been the president of the NRS. What else I've got here? He's been the president of ASCII, and also president of ABC. So he's a legend in his own right. And my guest this evening is the chairman, managing director, and founder of Madison Worldwide. And welcome to the live chat, Friday's live chat, Sam.
Thank you, Raj. It's a pleasure and honor for me to have this chat with you.
Sam, you have no clue how excited I am because, as I started my career in this industry, you were already there, and I've tracked your journey in not tracking it, but I have by default, being in the same industry, seen how you evolved and how you've grown, how you built a small agency which went on to become India's. If people are talking about Atmanirbhar today, you were Atmanirbhar 20 years back or 30 years back, whenever Madison started, and you ended up becoming the number one 100% Indian-owned agency, and the number 2 agency in the country in media. And so, your journey has been spectacular, and the diversity of products that you built with this Madison also has been great. So what I'm going to do today, and I hope you watched some of my previous episodes, it's all about you, Sam. So you get to do all the talking. It's just in the beginning I do the talking, but after this you get to do the talking. So we are going to track your journey from the time you were born. So you're going to tell me today,
Wow.
Where were you born and where are you from?
So I was born in Bombay, Raj, but my parents lived in a small town called Balsara, from where I get my name. It's a small town in Gujarat, about 100 miles from Bombay. And but my mother is from Bombay, and so the house you have come to was built by my mother's father way back. I think the house is now 90 years old. Way back, I think, when probably very successful Parsis, built a bungalow on Nepean Sea Road. But my grandfather probably was not that successful, so he built a bungalow in Malcolm Bagh, Jogeshwari. And one of the stories I say about my house is that the garage that we used to have, of course, now it's been changed to Tanya Computer Center for the visually handicapped. But that garage originally was a horse carriage garage. So, at that time, Jogeshwari did not have a suburban railway station. So he used to have what we call a Goragari. And the Goragari would take him from Jogeshwari to Andheri station, make him wait. The Goragari would wait there the day and then bring him back in the evening. And now that I think about it, I used to have a scooter when I was in college in Bangalore. And when I came to Bombay, I did something similar. But at the other end of town, I used to park my scooter, at a petrol pump at Churchgate Station, and use the scooter to go all around town and to work and all that, and then park it back and then take the train, because that was one of the most efficient things you could do with travel in Bombay, living as I did in Jogeshwari. But I
So,
didn't live in Balsar for too long. But I do think that actually, it's necessary for advertising people and communication people to live in a small town. I feel, when you live in a small town, you get to see and understand human behavior and human motivation for that behavior, much more clearly than when you live in a big city. Because I think in a city, everybody learns to camouflage their persona. You want to project yourself, and your real sort of personality you want to camouflage. So it becomes more difficult to understand human motivations when you are in a big metropolitan city. But in a small town, everything is a lot more transparent. I think, as you know, our creative geniuses, Piyush Pandey and Prasun Joshi, have also spent a lot of time in their early years in small towns.
yeah, yeah, that's right. So, Sam, I'm going to come back again. But before that, tell me what your parents did and what are your fond memories of going to. Would you go back for holidays to Balsar?
No, unfortunately, my after my grandfather passed away, my father sold the house because there was nobody really to look after it, and it would have just deteriorated. So my father sold it, and that's why we don't really go to Balsar now.
And what were your parents? What was your father doing, Sam? What was his?
So my father was doing what my grandfather was doing. That is, he joined my grandfather in his timber business. So, he was what would be called a forest contractor. So they would kind of tender from the government huge tracts of forest land, and the land that they would win the tender for, they got the rights to actually cut that wood and then sell it. And that was a business my father grew up with. And shockingly, I think maybe after he turned, maybe, I don't know, 55 or so, the government nationalized this business. So actually, he did a rather brave thing, I would say. He left small town Balsar and he moved to Bangalore, which even then could be considered a very sophisticated and westernized sort of city compared to, small town Balsar. And he actually bought a hotel there, on Residency Road, called Mesh's Hotel, which was originally started by a German. And then he, along with my mom, ran this hotel for a fair amount of time. So actually, most of my growing up years have been in Bangalore and living in that hotel. And we used to also eat at the hotel, and it was a completely different old world of English people and Anglo-Indian people, and very different world from either the world of Balsar or today's Bombay.
Sam, I mean, where on Residency Road was it? I mean,
It
I
was
have fond memories of Bangalore.
it was a bank opposite the Bangalore Club. You know,
Oh,
it was
where the
bank opposite the Bangalore Club, and it was a huge property. I would say it was like uh, it was at least a 5 acre plot, maybe or 3-4 acre plot. So it was absolutely prime plot, bang opposite the Bangalore Club on Residency Road. And I think I was very fortunate that my school was, to the right of my house, which was Bishop Cotton's. And then on later years, my college, St. Joseph's College of Commerce, was to the right of my house.
Yeah. So when I visualize it now from looking at it, could be there's a huge complex there now called Devta Plaza. Probably that
Yes,
the
so
whole
Devta
property.
Plaza is actually bang opposite Bishop Cotton School,
Yeah.
and next to Bishop Cotton School is the Bangalore Club. So we were opposite the Bangalore Club.
Okay.
Of
And
course, Devta Plaza and all is a fairly recent addition by my standards.
true, true.
I moved to Bangalore in the 60s.
Wow. You know, Sam, I have fond memories of Bangalore too. Coming to the hotel, of course, the property is not there, the hotel was not there. But what are your memories when you were young, uh, running the hotel? Would you go and be part of it when you are studying and things like that? And at what age did
Yes, yes.
your parents?
I would say I think thanks to the hotel, uh, I lived, I would say, a fairly charmed life because we had all the bearers and cooks to look after us, and of course, I think in later years, as I grew up, I also played a small role in managing the small hotel. It was a small hotel, but a sort of a Western style full board and lodge hotel. And I remember we used to charge a princely sum of 20 rupees per person per day for full board and lodge. And that would include from your bed tea to full English breakfast to a proper full course served lunch to evening tea with cake and sandwiches and end with dinner, with soup and a main course and a dessert and what we used to call a savory. I think something that the world has forgotten today, but in those days, we used to never end a meal with actually just the dessert. We used to end the meal after dessert with a thing we call savory, which was like a fried small piece of toast with something a little salty or mildly sort of spiced up thing, and then coffee.
Yeah, but later in life, people now have liquor after after
Yes,
dinner.
of course there was no liquor. I mean, and
Yeah. And what are your fond memories of growing up in Bangalore? I mean, some landmarks, some places that you remember.
so actually, when I go to Bangalore now, I find it unbelievable. Also, my life in Bangalore, very surprisingly, revolved only around Residency Road, Brigade Road, Mahatma Gandhi Road, and Queens Road. And it's only when some people came visiting us from Bombay that I would take them to Lal Bagh and Cubbon Park and Vidhana Sudha and take them boating on the Alsur Lake, and then take them on a day trip to Mysore. And that was the Bangalore of my time. I was I mean, today there are so many different nagars, and my God, the traffic is absolutely unbearable. You know, once I recently missed a flight because of the traffic.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
certainly, I would say Bangalore of those days was wonderful. Even today, I think if I go to Bangalore, I make it a point to go to Oshi's and don't miss having steak and onion there, and that's one of my favorite things at
yeah,
Koshi's.
yeah.
And fortunately, the restaurant still exists, and they make it almost the same way that I used to have it, you know, 50 years ago.
Yeah, Koshi's, and there used to be another place called Victoria. Of course, Victoria has gone away now, but
Yeah,
Koshi's is
Victoria
still
was
there.
on the other side, correct? Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
In fact,
Sam. No, please
Victoria,
continue.
Victoria also had for some time, some of the boys from Bombay who had come to Bangalore for doing their engineering used to stay there. And so, that Victoria was also quite a place that I used to visit for that period of time almost every day in the evening. So, I would go there, and then we would all go to Brigade Road in the evening. And if we had the pocket money, we would have a coffee at Three Aces. And of course, most of the time we wouldn't have that money, so we would just be walking up and down Brigade Road and MG Road, and then go back home. And of course, chat up about everything under the sun that you could dream of. So there was a lot of talk and very little action.
Yeah, Sam, everything that you said, everything, taking people to Lal Bagh, to Mysore, and those, I've done all that, and I've walked up and down as well. So great memories. So tell me, how many siblings are you? I mean,
Yeah,
how many brothers?
we are three brothers, no sisters. So
Okay, and please continue.
my elder brother, I think, did his engineering in Bombay and then went to Bangalore to join Myco. And he was the one company man. He joined Myco as a trainee and, retired from Myco. My second brother, who you must have met in Bombay, is in Bombay. We lived together in our house, and he did his chartered accountancy, and he never worked for anyone. He started his own practice, and until recently, he had his practice. It's only now that he's kind of, you could say, semi-retired. In fact, I was all set to follow his footsteps after I had done my BCom, or during the time I was doing my BCom at St. Joseph's College of Commerce. I was also kind of all set to become a chartered accountant. And then I discovered that my cousin, who's a few years elder to me, was doing his MBA at IIM Ahmedabad. And I'd heard that, it was extremely difficult to get in there and only the real geniuses get in. So I decided to also give it a shot. Unfortunately, I did not get into IIM Ahmedabad, but I think I got into what I would call and was recognized as the third best management school, which is Bajaj Institute in Bombay. So I kind of, in those days, there was no entry barrier to trying to become a chartered accountant. There was only an exit barrier. But if you wanted to do an MBA, there was a very high entry barrier and probably no exit barrier. So the latter appealed to me a little more and sounded a little more challenging and more sort of, what should I say, modern than becoming a CA. So I just, without probably thinking very hard, just took that route. And of course, I
So
had a house in Bombay to stay in, which is again the same house that you have been to, because that has always been my house in Bombay.
yeah,
So
I mean, to have a house like yours in Bombay is a big luxury. I mean, yeah, anybody who visits your house won't tell you that it is Bombay. That's the beauty of it. And probably uh, those days your great grandfather bought it because, like you said, he couldn't afford in South Bombay. But
yeah, I
today
know, and he didn't buy it; he built it.
he built it. Yeah.
He built it.
And today, if anybody comes to your house, I can guarantee you they'll say, we would rather live in Jogeshwari, where Sam lives, rather than Malabar Hill or in Cuff Parade or somewhere like that.
And as I will also say, the second best thing that I have done in my life, besides starting Madison, is actually, buy the rights to the plot of land that existed, empty plot of land that existed behind my house, and built a house there for Lara and Kaizad. So now I'm blessed to have the company of my grandchildren often.
Yeah. You're a lucky man, Sam. Since you mentioned Madison, so tell us, how did your journey into advertising happen?
So I joined a company called Sarabais, which doesn't exist now because the professor who taught me marketing, Pran Chaudhary in Bajaj Institute, he was the marketing director at Sarabais, and they had launched a home products marketing company which used to make Det and Swastik, Lal Tel, and all in competition to Lever. So I joined them and was the brand manager there. I left them after 4 years to join Cadbury. So I was the brand manager of chocolates first, and then I was the brand manager of Bonvita, which was the bigger business than chocolates then, because cocoa was always in short supply in India, or in fact all over the world. And then after 8 years in marketing, I thought it was going to be a while before I could move up from being product group manager to marketing manager and head the marketing function. So I said, since advertising is so closely related to marketing, why don't I try my hand at advertising? And at that time, JWT, or HTA as it was then called, was starting their second agency called Contract.
Yeah, I remember
So
Contract.
I joined
Yes.
Contract. I joined Contract as their first head of client service. So there was Raj Jagga there, who was like the general manager, and then Mohammad Khan, who had come in from London after spending many years there as the creative director, Indrani Sen as the media director, and I was the head of client service. And our first account and our claim to fame was that we launched Charm cigarettes in that denim pack, which created quite a storm in the cigarette market.
I know. Charms पीने वालों की बात ही कुछ और है. I remember the
Yes,
ad.
correct. Charms is the spirit of freedom. Charms is the way you are.
Yes.
And we also did a superphone ad, I remember, for which Mohammed wrote the line, if you want to talk, don't walk. Because those days, the superphone was the real outdated old technology intercom, which you could buy for offices, because phones were so difficult to come by in those days.
Yeah. I remember, I mean, we had the first job that I did in my uncle's office. We had a Sharp intercom. So I remember that.
Sharp, correct. So Sharp was Superphone's biggest competitor, and we were always trying to grab share from it.
Anybody who's watching this, who's 40 plus, I think, will relate to everything that you're saying. The millennials don't even know what we are talking about. But Sam, so you worked with the contract, and then what?
So I worked with contract, and then one fine day, Mohammed Khan decided to move on from contract and start his own agency enterprise. And then I also decided to move on. At that time, Mudra had started in Ahmedabad, and they were looking for a person to start their Bombay office. And that is how I came in touch with A.G. Krishnamurthy, who was heading Mudra then. And that is how I joined them. And I must say, I did well for myself at Mudra, and I think I did well for Mudra too. Those were the initial days of television when we had just convinced the government to launch what was known as a sponsored program scheme. So, under that scheme, Raj, I don't know if you also know this from the early days, that it's we who used to actually make or actually commission a television program, pay for it ourselves, or make the client pay for it, and then give that ready program to Doordarshan for telecasting, pay Doordarshan the telecast charges, and Doordarshan in turn would give us 90 seconds or 120 seconds FCT, where our clients had would run. One of the first programs I did under that scheme was Rajni. It was done by Basu Chatterjee. I still remember featuring Priya Tendulkar, and I paid 60,000 rupees for it. And the program used to come on Sunday mornings, and it was such a big hit that on the fourth episode, which was on taxis, and it took sort of errand taxi drivers to book, Mr. Adi Godrej was actually garlanded at Churchgate Station in a felicitation ceremony by some consumer organization, for the yeoman service Godrej had done for bringing these errand taxi drivers to book.
No, I remember those days because 1 minute. Yeah, I remember those days because Doordarshan that time was it called Mudra Videotech or something like that?
Yeah, well, Mudra Videotech we also were one of the first agencies at that time to have a small studio of our own. Okay. So, many of the gizmos that you saw in those days on the Vimal ads were actually done in that studio. And therefore, we also took the lead, and, we used to put on the Mudra Videotech 5-second tag on all the sponsored programs that we released. Yeah, so that is how Mudra Videotech became a common name.
Yeah. I don't want to take names, but I have met some people who told me that, in those days, when you had a problem, and especially I know one or two actors who have told me that we just went to Sam and he helped us out, so that's where, and I've known that about you, Sam. You've helped so many people, so I want to ask you.
What they don't know is that whilst helping out others, I also help myself, because the programs that I supported did well for me and my clients too.
Yeah, no, That's a good way of looking at it. And Sam, I want to ask you, which are the shows besides Rajini? Which are the shows that you fondly remember?
Well, I think the other big show that we did was Bunyad.
Yeah,
It was, I
iconic.
think, it was the first show that used to come twice a week, I think on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 p.m. And of course, the other very big thing I did in programming is, in those days, how funny it sounds today, but most of the television viewership was actually restricted initially to between 9 and 10 p.m. And advertising rates for slots on that 9 and 10 p.m. could go as high, even in those days, to 1 lakh and 1,50,000 per 10 seconds. So what we thought, that, since we had clients like Procter and Gamble and Godrej, who were mainly talking to housewives and were sitting idle in the afternoons, why don't we create a good, serial and play it in the afternoon? But to make it successful, I think we thought that, we should have a programming Monday to Friday. So it took me about 1 year to convince Doordarshan to give me a time slot in the afternoon, and I think I ultimately succeeded. And then I approached Ronnie Screwvala of UTV, who came up with the Shanti storyline and Mandira Devi featuring in it. And, whilst I had provided, 6 months for the program really to take off, and had promised our clients that there would be huge payoff at the end of 6 months, because you'll get almost half the viewership as your 9 p.m. program, but at 1/10 the cost. Actually, the program hit the bullseye within about 3 weeks. So that is how actually afternoon programming started in India with Shanti. So that is
Yeah,
something, again, I remember very fondly.
again, nostalgia when you think of Shanti, Bunyad, Rajini, all iconic shows.
Raj, I just remembered one another incident that was also quite a historic incident. Star had started, or was just about starting, and was airing Bold and Beautiful. And I got interested in that program, and so did, I remember Mrs. Parmeshwar Godrej at Godrej. And one day we were talking about it, and we said, why don't we sponsor this program? So actually, I reached out to Star in those days in Hong Kong. And there was a guy called Todd Miller from Star Hong Kong. He was a junior executive. He flew down to Bombay to meet me. We had a breakfast meeting. And it's very odd. I'm talking about it because he's my Facebook friend. And he's just sort of about 2 years ago given up everything and retired in Thailand. And he's now written a book on, how you can give up everything and live a life starting 50.
Todd and I worked together, Sam. I mean, when I
Oh,
joined Star,
wonderful.
when
So are
I
you in
joined
touch
Star,
with him?
when I joined Star in 1993, Todd, was my. There were three people of my port of contact in Hong Kong. Todd was one of them. And initially, until we stabilized in India for the first 6 months, he would also fly down. We used to call him the helicopter salesman because he used to fly in and fly out. You know, yeah. So then, I mean, And I remember, I mean, we had Bold and Beautiful, Godrej was there, and then there was another client that those days called Ceasefire, if you remember.
Ceasefire, yes, of course.
Yeah. So these were the two anchor clients for Bold and Beautiful sponsorship those days. I recollect. I recollect. Sam, so tell me, how did Madison happen? How did you decide to turn into an entrepreneur?
So, I have to kind of say this that I did not really have any dying ambition to become an entrepreneur. The way it came about is that, after Mudra became a little more prominent, Mudra developed the ambition of wanting to become India's largest advertising agency. And that mantle was with HTA or JWT for decades. And in those days, I was a little more, idealistic. And in my scheme of things, a good agency was one which was small with a few large clients. So that was my ideal of a good agency. And also my sort of personal disposition was that I wanted to be a craftsman rather than a manager of, men, materials, and money. So I remember I had taken a week off for my Tanya Lara's Naujot. At that time, it was in January of 1988. And something flipped in my mind, and I said, it may be a good idea for me to think of starting my own agency. And then one thing led to another. I met a friend of mine called Sunil Kapoor, and he said that actually, I know of an agency called Madison at Horniman Circle, who is sort of looking to sell out. Why don't you meet him? So I met this gentleman, it clicked. We signed the deal, I think, within 2 days. And on March 21st, which is like our Jamshedi Navroz for the Parsis, I started. And I must say I was extremely lucky and fortunate because two of my clients who I used to service at Mudra, one was Godrej and the other was Tata Nelco, who I had launched Blue Diamond televisions for. Both of them readily agreed to, move their business to me. So I would say it was not at all traumatic. It was quite smooth sailing from being an employee to being an entrepreneur. So those were the early days. Of course, my ambition was small, my goals were small, my needs were limited, and of course we tried to keep overheads to the minimum. I believe I was a lot more idealistic then than I am today. And I could afford to take all those idealistic decisions, say no to a lot of businesses if they just quite didn't fit in my scheme of things as being an ideal client. I refused to negotiate on anything. And yet somehow I survived and succeeded.
Not only survived and succeeded, I mean, you went on to some of the biggest clients in this country, whether it's Coca-Cola and all, where your clients, Cadbury's, where all Marico, where your clients for a long. And they've, one of the things I've noticed is most of your clients stayed with you. They stayed with you for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, what would you say was your mantra? What was the what was so special about Madison, considering that you were
I
competing with
think
all international agencies?
I would say uh, I think I'm very high on empathy. I always look at things from the other person's point of view. I was very high on client service. You know, most of the clients I dealt with, even in Mudra, would give me high marks, and especially if they were, dealing with multiple agencies, I would come out on tops on strategy and client service. And I think in those days when media was not very established as a science or as a discipline, it was easy for me to stand out because invariably, for large clients, we would not stinge or we would not try to make a fast buck. We would have large, dedicated teams. We would have top talent. And, there was that was really the secret formula. So I think every client helped get us another client because that client was extremely happy with us. And I think soon news spread, and therefore larger clients and global clients who were not very happy with their global agencies also took permissions from their foreign head offices or whatever to make an exception and deal with us. Of course, it didn't last too long because one by one the global clients did come under pressure in India and had to, at some point in time, deal with their roster agencies as the world became a global village and everything got centralized out of New York or Hong Kong or Tokyo. It was not possible for many clients to have one isolated agency handle one country. So I think we suffered on that count. But then somehow, the advertising market also during that time grew. Indian clients, I think, recognized the power of and the business building potential of advertising as a strategic input, and therefore, they started coming to us and started spending big bucks. And I think one of the things that happened, I must confess, that the way media really happened, Raj, is that it was PNG to whom I would give the credit for discovering and recognizing my own media talent and the talent at Madison, because they are the ones who told me that, look, you know, we want to do a media AOR. So, we'll have just one agency. They didn't give me the business on a platter. They called a pitch, and Madison won that pitch. And as they say, the rest is history. And once, media as a separate standalone discipline started doing well for me, I got sold on the concept of specialization because I recognized that what specialization did was, it built a cadre of people, it built pride in people. By doing the same job repeatedly, people became experts. They got recognized as experts. So then I applied the same, concept to other disciplines. Like then we started a PR agency, and I identified a old colleague of mine, Veena Gidwani, and requested her to lead Madison PR. And then slowly, then after Lara joined in, then we looked at many more units. Some of them we started, some of them we acquired. And that is how, we today have a rather uh, sort of extensive list of agencies offering services in almost every area that an enlightened advertiser would need.
Yeah. You just mentioned Lara. So uh, tell me about Homai. That's your wife. I mean, tell me how did you meet her, and tell me a little bit about Lara and Tanya.
So, Homai, my wife, actually, I've known her since childhood, since she is my cousin. So it was no surprise that I kind of knew her. It's not that anybody had to introduce me to her. I have two children, as you know, Tanya and Lara. I think you also know that my Tanya, the elder daughter, is handicapped. She is visually blind. When she was born, actually, a few months, and we discovered that something could be wrong with her eyes. I was very confident that by the time she grows up, with the amount of sort of technology and advances in medicine, some cure would come up for blindness. Unfortunately, so far, nothing has come up. But then she's, I think, got happy. She used to have sight as a very small child, but then she lost sight. It's a progressive disease called retinitis pigmentosa. So I think by the time she hit eighth or ninth standard, she had completely lost sight. But she leads, I'm happy to say, a very purposeful life. Uh, for the last, I think, 15 years, she runs Tanya Computer Center, which is now supported by Madison Resource Foundation. And she herself teaches other blind and not so fortunate children on how to use computers free of cost. So she's been doing this for a long time, and she's now virtually a friend, philosopher, and guide to all the blind people, or many of the blind people in Bombay. And we now also, through the Ahmedabad Blind People's Association, run 4 centers in Gujarat. And I'm trying to start a center now in Balsara for reasons you can well imagine, for imparting computer education to the blind. This year has been a washout for Tanya Computer Center in Bombay. But in Ahmedabad, I must say we are conducting a lot of courses and all that on the web, and somehow keeping the blind sort of engaged in some form or the other. So
Yeah.
Lara, of course, after doing her, by the way, my Tanya also, uh, in spite of her condition, went all the way to Xavier's College, to a normal college. So she used to go by train early morning. She was helped by a very good friend of hers called Priya, who used to meet her at Andheri station. So Homai would drop her to Andheri station, make her meet Priya, and then both of them go together by train. And she would get Priya's notes, which Homai would record on the tape recorder. And also many of our other people in Malcolm Bagh would record notes for her. And that is how she went to a normal school and a normal college. And And after college, she did this computer training and then went started this Tanya Computer Center. So that's something rather fulfilling she does, and is very fulfilling for me too. And I want to do more in this area.
Yeah, I mean, I've met Tanya a couple of times, many times, and she's an inspiration, Sam. She's truly an inspiration to a lot of people. I mean, so and the fact that you are supporting her and encouraging her in whatever she wants to do, I think it's great. And Lara, I mean, Lara's joined you, right,
So
in business.
Yes, Lara also did her Xavier's college 1 year later, and then Lara did her, what is it called, Masters in Marketing in Bristol, UK. I think she did a spot of working in Madison before going to UK, and then came back and joined Madison as a management trainee. And today, I think she is a tremendous support and takes a huge load off me. She is the opposite of me in terms of disposition and way of thinking. She's totally cool, calm, and logical. I think because of her, she has stopped me from taking quite a few rash decisions, helped cool me down often, I would say. So she plays an important role now at Madison.
Yeah, and you got a very strong team. You got Vikram there, Vikram Sakuja, and
And of course, earlier we had Punita for a very long period of time in media, and now it happened, and then Punita moved on to Google, and in between we had for a short while a person called Gautam, who was my client in PNG, and then he had to relocate to Singapore. And it so happened that one fine day I read in the Economic Times that, uh, Vikram may be available and is looking to resettle back in Bombay from New York. So I called him up. I thought I was calling him in New York, but he happened to be in Hyderabad that day. And then we met. So I offered him a partnership, some shares in Madison, and here we are. I think 6 years later, he's a intrinsic part of Madison and a co-owner of Madison along with me.
yeah, and you couldn't have found a better person. I mean, Vikram
Correct.
is he compliments you in many ways, in many ways. Yeah. So what's your future plans? What's your future for Madison? What do you where do you see Madison a few years from now?
Well, I think I always see Madison as bigger, better, and doing more good for more clients. I think that is my calling. Uh, over the years, many people have asked me what is the future of Madison, and people have been asking me this for the last 20 years. But I somehow feel that we have a way of figuring things out. And, you know, as I was just telling you before we started our live chat, I'm greatly inspired by Biden. And I think my life is not over. I'm only 70. And if he could become the president of the United States at 76, I have still a lot to achieve. And I think I want to make sure that all my energies continue pouring into Madison and we make Madison bigger, better, and stronger. I must say that, over the years, both Lara and I have received many proposals from very many different people, asking us to get into education, to get into construction, to get into all kinds of things. And I'm happy that I kind of did not allow myself to waver and, if you may use the word, diversify into something else, because I think that has helped keep the focus on medicine and made sure that all our energies go only into medicine and not get, attention does not get diverted to other things.
Yeah. No, and with the combination of Lara, you, Vikram, I think you will only go from strength to strength. Sam, you just mentioned that you're 70, and you're one of the youngest at heart person I know in our industry. And you relate to everybody. You relate from a Mr. Godrej to, you relate to the uh, new executive who's just joined or something like that. I mean, you relate to everybody at the same thing. At 70, how do you manage to stay so young?
Uh, First of all, I think I am young. So I think that's the way
Yeah.
I stay young. Uh, I think I am genuinely interested in everything I do. I think I'm genuinely interested in my clients doing better and better. I'm genuinely interested in Madisonites doing better and better. I'm genuinely interested in life. So I think it keeps me going. And I don't do the things that I don't like just because I have to do them, because then I don't do them. But
For
I'm lucky that I like the things I do and I do the things I like.
very nice. And for those of you who don't know, of course, now it's pandemic times, but otherwise, if there are 7 functions in a day, Sam would be present in all the 7 functions to make everybody happy. Okay, he would attend every meeting and he would know the minutest detail in every association of what's happening. And that's Sam Balsara for you, Sam. Before you go, I want to ask you, what do you do to as a stress buster? What do you do? What is your stress buster?
Well, I have not been very high on exercise all my life, till one fine day 9 years ago. I got a rude shock when my doctor told me that I had to go for angiography, and then that led to a bypass operation. So since then, I've become a little more conscious of my health. So today I do yoga 3 times a week in the morning, and I think I walk almost every day in the evening, thanks to the pandemic. Otherwise, earlier I used to walk also 2, 3 times a week on Saturdays, Sundays, and maybe 1 or 2 days of the week when I went back home early. So I think that, according to me, is a bit of a stress buster. Doing some exercise in the morning, doing something, walking at night, they're good stress busters.
I remember visiting you in your house when you had that bypass surgery, and ever since then you have bounced back. You bounced back even more. And Sam, my last question to you before you leave: what is it that makes you happy?
Uh, I think what really makes me happy is, you know, to see a happy and satisfied client, and to see a Madison campaign working and producing business results, you know, for the brand that we are working on. I mean, that gives me a real high and satisfaction and happiness that cannot be matched by any amount of money or any amount of luxury or any amount of the best of food or liquor or anything else.
So now we know your mantra, and the fact that you do so much and you manage to keep all your clients happy. I mean, it's visible when you speak with so much passion that one thing that makes you happy is to keep your clients happy, to make sure that Madison takes care of its people. And so, Sam, thank you so much. You are one person who I think if I had to end it, I would sum it up by saying you're one person who lives, talks, eats, sleeps, work to a large extent, and at the same time has equal commitment to his family and his children and things like that. So thank you very much. You are an inspiration. Your journey is quite inspiring for many, many people. And thank you very much for spending this time with me this evening. It was
My
really, really.
pleasure. My pleasure, Raj. It was an honor for me to be on your prestigious Fridays Live, which has become quite an institution in such a short while. As I told you, I have been watching many episodes, but I watched them on Friday late night on Facebook.
Yeah. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Sam.
Bye, Raj. Bye, Raj.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.